Very well, Your Worship. Thank you, and we apologize for the inconvenience.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I would like to ask Mrs. Pearson for the roll call, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Dighton.
Back finally again.
Councillor Fields. Councillor O'Hara.
Present.
Councillor Purdy.
Present.
Councillor Such.
Present.
Councillor Welton.
Present.
Mayor Loosely.
Present.
And we do have a quorum, Your Worship.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. At this time, I would like to ask council if there's anyone that would like to declare a conflict of interest now or at the appropriate time and complete the necessary paperwork for the clerk. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the agenda before you tonight. So I'll need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. Any discussion regarding the agenda before you? All those in favor of approving that agenda? Opposed? That motion carries. And I would just like to go back for 1 second to welcome Councillor Dighton back from his leave of absence. So Councillor Dighton, welcome back. Moving on, I'd like to ask council for the approval of a minutes of a regular council meeting held on February the 14th. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Welton and seconded by Councillor Such. And I will ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the regular meeting of council held on the 14th of February, 2022.
Any discussion from council? Errors or omissions? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. And I'd also like to request council's approval for the special meeting of council held on March the 4th. And I'll need a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Dighton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. Any discussion regarding those minutes? Okay, I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt as circulated minutes of the special meeting of council held on March 4th, 2022.
All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Going down to the inspirational message, tonight we're going to have a moment of silence for a couple of individuals and for Ukraine. For the first one, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in remembering the past councillor Helen Havlick, who passed away on February the 28th, 2022. And I would like to add Maxine Fiddick, who passed away on March 24th, 2022. And Maxine Fiddick was a councillor from 1986 to 1994. So I'll ask for a moment of silence for those two, please. Thank you. And I'd also like to request a moment of reflection to show solidarity for Ukraine. So once again, we'll have a moment of silence, please. Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the council round table announcements. I'll just remind council, you will be reporting on the committees right after this. So the round table will just be other issues you may have to come forward. We'll start with Councillor O'Hara, please.
I have nothing at this time.
Thank you. Councillor Such.
I heard through the grapevine, and we got two hockey teams of Petroleum minor hockey. Hopefully I get this right. The Bantam AEs are going to the Ontario finals, as well as the midget AEs. So best of luck to them, and hopefully they bring some hardware home to us.
Thank you, Counselor Sutton. Certainly, we all wish them the very best. That's great. Counselor Purdy,
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
thank you. Counselor Welton,
Nothing at this time as I was away, Your Worship.
and I will acknowledge Council Dayton. I'm not sure if you'll have anything, but Counselor Dayton, go ahead.
If I can come off mute, it would work a lot better. Nothing at this time, Your Worship. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And I do have a few items I'd like to just report to council. I attended a county committee meeting on Wednesday, February the 16th, followed by a special budget meeting requesting a 2.5% increase for 2022. And as usual, I'll keep council informed. I was also invited by the Office of the Fire Marshal, who hosted a technical briefing on the proposed regulation to establish minimum firefighters certification standards on Wednesday, February the 16th. Mr. Rick Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, and Fire Chief Arns were also in attendance. Mr. Rick Charlebois, CAO Treasurer, and I was invited by the minister to take part and speak on the asset management planning process, along with municipalities of Central Elgin, the Loyalist Township, and the Township of South Huron on Friday, February the 18th. And I feel it went very well again. We'll keep council informed. Special thanks to the staff, volunteers, service clubs, New Life Assembly, and all those that donated towards the Petrolia Family Day events during that weekend of February 25th. I feel it was a great success to the residents and surrounding area. I attended the Sarnia Lambton Chamber of Commerce Annual General Meeting held on Wednesday, February 23rd at 6 p.m. That turned out to be very worthwhile. Congratulations to the Optimist Club of Lambton Central Petrolia on their 40th anniversary, effective March the 1st, 2022. Their work and donations over the years to Petrolia and surrounding area has been outstanding, completing projects that would not have taken place without their help. And I'll just report the acting mayor, Councillor O'Hara, will be taking my place at their event at the end of the month. I attended the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority's annual meeting on Thursday, February 24th, and I've been reappointed to the executive committee. And again, we'll keep council informed. I attended the Southwest Apprenticeship Network Zoom meeting on behalf of the town for the first Excellent in Apprenticeship Training Awards Gala on Friday, February 25th. That turned out to be a great success. I also attended a county council budget meeting on Wednesday, March the 2nd, and was concerned for the following reasons. The meeting only lasted 45 minutes to approve a $236 million budget. The department heads were there only to answer questions, but I feel that county council would greatly benefit if they would quickly review their budget for the highlights and any changes from the previous year. I was also disappointed that county council would not reconsider to discuss any dollars for capital work to go towards Blue Water Health. The county approved a 2.5% increase for 2022. The increase on local taxes is a result of the county and not the town of Petrolia. I attended the vigil in support of the people of Ukraine who are fighting for their freedom at the Petrolia Legion on Sunday, March the 6th. It was a great event, and Legion Padre Rudy Terpstra gave a great message. I also attended an asset management workshop again this year for the elected officials on Tuesday, March the 8th through AMO. That turned out to be very informative. I would like to recognize and congratulate Patty Powell in working for the town of Petrolia for 32 years at Hillsdale Cemetery. And as a crossing guard, Patty was a very reliable, hardworking employee. And on behalf of council and staff, I'd like to thank her for the service to the town and wish her the very best in her retirement. I would also like to thank Mrs. Annette Major, Executive Assistant Deputy Clerk, on behalf of council and staff for her dedication and hard work to the town of Petrolia who is leaving the end of March. She will certainly be missed, but would like to wish her the very best in her future endeavors. Please note that Councillor Ross O'Hara is the mayor's appointee for the month of March and April. I also took part in the Lambton Group Police Service Board meeting with the municipal mayors to review new applicants on the board on Monday, March 21st. And again, we'll keep council informed when I have more information. I would like to inform everyone, if you have not already seen it, the clock tower has blue and yellow spotlights on at night in support of the people in Ukraine. I would also like to encourage the residents to make a donation if possible. As council may also be aware, I presented a check on behalf of council as budgeted for $5,000 to the Thriving Kids and Youth campaign at the Petrolia YMCA. Mr. Joe Silveski, center manager, accepted the check with thanks. I would also like to advise council, myself, along with Councillor O'Hara and Councillor Field, who completed the CAO's annual performance review. I am pleased to report that we have Mr. Charlebois at the helm of our municipality. He has done a wonderful job since his appointment and continues to do so. Under Mr. Charlebois' forward-thinking approach and leadership, his expertise and financial skill, Petrolia continues to be on a path of success. And I'd like to congratulate and thank Mr. Charlebois. And that's all I have. So moving on, we'll go now to our reports from the different committees. We'll go first to planning and development, and our liaison members is Councillor Joel Field and Councillor Ross O'Hara, and Councillor Field is not here tonight. So Councillor O'Hara, do you have anything to report? You're on mute, Ross. Ross, we can't hear you. Ross, I still can't hear you. I'll come back, Ross, in a few minutes. No, I can't hear you. Let's go on to municipal services and traffic. And our liaison member is Councillor Welton.
Yes, your worship, we have R1 and R2 report to council in on tonight's agenda with recommendation, as well as Valentina Street reconstruction. Both tenders had a considerable amount of interest, and operations department is pleased with the results. Third, Mutual and Kendall Street reconstruction is now out for tender, and the results will be coming to council in late April. Transfer station dates as well as shipping dates are on tonight's agenda, and operations is preparing for the upcoming season. Summer staff have been hired to work the dates and will anticipate another busy year. And finally, thanks again to the Public Works for all their hard work over the winter months, clearing snow around town. That's it, your worship.
Thank you, Councillor Welton. And that's certainly a very interesting report showing all the activities and all the construction and work that's coming. The council will deal with some of that later on in the agenda. Thank you. Moving on, we'll go to the Petrolia North Enerskill and Fire Committee. And we have Councillor Field, who's not here tonight, but Councillor Grant Purdy. Would you take it in, please? Or go ahead.
Certainly, Worship. Thank you. We met recently, and a few things to highlight. One of them is we went through the annual report. Call volumes are tending to be consistent. We also made a recommendation that both councils spend a combined total of $50,000 for the fire hall washroom renos, and town staff are working with us along with an architect to design and then hopefully get the tender out. Committee also recommended up to $30,000 be earmarked for the purchase and installation of an industrial washing machine that removes polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, and that's just a fancy term for carcinogens that are a result of fire, which gets on the volunteers' fire gear. And this machine has been shown to have these hydrocarbons low enough to an acceptable level, and this is very important as it demonstrates our commitment through the councils through the chief and through our committee to protect the health and safety of our volunteer firefighters and staff. And we're hoping to have it ordered sometime in April. And the other thing we discussed was the Ontario Fire Marshal training regulations, and that our department is very well aligned. And we not only meet, but in many instances exceed the minimum requirements set out. And we also were apprised by Chief Arns of an agreement with the Plimpton, Wyoming Fire to provide specialized hazmat responses, which will be fully reimbursed and will be at a cost recovery. And that's about it.
Councilor Purdy, thank you. That's really a lot of information, but it's great news that our Petrolia North Innes Fire Department, we can be so proud of what they're doing and what they've got coming. So what I'd like to do, we do have a motion to adopt their minutes. I'd like to deal with their minutes at this time if I could. So could I have a move and a seconder to approve the minutes for the fire management on October the 21st and the minutes on March the 22nd? So I'll need a move and a seconder. Moved by Councilor Purdy, seconded by Councilor Dighton. Any discussion regarding those minutes? I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And those are just to receive as information, as that is a fire committee that is not an advisory committee. So that is a little bit separate from what we normally approve. So they are just to receive as information. So that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information the October 21st, 2021 Joint Fire Committee minutes and the March 22nd, 2022 draft Joint Fire Committee minutes.
Any discussion regarding those minutes before you? If not, all those in favor of approving those minutes? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we'll move on now to Parks and Recreation. We have Councilor Dighton. I know he's been off and Councilor Field has been taking his place while he has been gone, but we have Councilor Welton that's also on there. So Councilor Welton, do you have anything to report regarding the Community Services Advisory Committee?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Okay, if not, we do have a motion before you. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion. And that's for the minutes on March the 2nd, 2022 for the Petrolia Parks and Recreation Committee meeting. I'll need a move and a seconder, please. Moved by Councilor Sutton, seconded by Councilor Dighton. Any discussion regarding those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to the Petrolia Heritage Advisory Committee. We have Councilor Field, who I know is not here tonight, and we have Councilor Such. And Wade is on that committee, but I know he's been away. Councilor Such, do you have anything to add regarding the Heritage Advisory Committee?
I wasn't at the last meeting, Your Worship, but just ongoing progress of working on the events plan for the upcoming year, and progress is going well.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Such. So we do have a motion before you to adopt the minutes of March the 2nd. Can I have a move and a seconder to put those minutes on the floor for approval, please? Moved by Councilor Dighton, seconded by Councilor Such. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to endorse as presented committee minutes of the March 2nd, 2022 Petrolia Heritage Advisory Committee meeting.
Any discussion regarding those minutes? All those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. And I will go back to Councilor O'Hara, just for the planning and development. Councilor O'Hara, go ahead.
Yeah, well, everything's going well with our committee that we have dealing with our, it's not really a committee, but it seems there's a lot of development in the process. I think a couple of developers getting pretty close, ready to go. And maybe I'll turn it over to Mr. Thompson from that.
Hey, Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I have nothing to add, Your Worship.
Okay, thank you. Well, that's great news though, Councilor O'Hara. It's nice to see that some of these developments that they've been working on for some time are hopefully coming to the point where we can start some construction. All right, that'll move us on to item number 9, correspondent for information. And we have items there, A to E. I'd like to put a motion on the floor to approve those or to receive and file, unless you'd like to pull any out for a separate discussion. Moved by Councilor Ross O'Hara, seconded by Councilor Dighton. Any discussion regarding the items listed before you? Okay, I'll ask the clerk just to read that motion then, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file correspondence in items 9A through, and I believe it's E.
That's correct. Any discussion from council regarding those items? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. We'll move on to number 10, which is correspondence from the County of Lambton, the larvicide program. And there's a motion there. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councilor Harris, seconded by Councilor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. And that is for the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to support the local action by the Lambton Public Health to reduce the risk of West Nile virus. As a result, the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia authorizes any permit application for West Nile virus control submitted to the Ministry of the Environment and Conservation and Parks from an appropriately licensed exterminator to apply a larvicide into catch basins or water surface located within and owned managed by the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia and located on private land that drain into the storm drain system or waterways located within the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia.
Thank you. Any discussion regarding that motion before you? Councilor O'Hara.
Does that include our stormwater management pond or whatever it is in Bridgeview Park?
That's a good question. Mrs.
I can
Pearson,
answer, Your Worship, if you wish.
please go ahead.
Yes, Councilor O'Hara, if it's put as part of the application and the ministry approves it, they may conduct the larvicide in that area. It also depends on what the area is a natural habitat for. So there'll be conditions around that, but anything that the ministry approves can receive the larvicide.
Is that okay, Councilor O'Hara?
Well, I guess so, but I would think if there's any place that would be a mosquito breeding ground, it would be there. And we don't really know if it's approved or not.
Is there any way we can follow up on that, Mrs. Pearson, or ask him to consider that?
Yeah, Your Worship, I could certainly work with the Director of Community Services and see if we can get a list of where the larvicides are placed.
That'd be great. Is that okay, Councilor O'Hara?
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion regarding that motion on the floor? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to number 11, delegations and presentation. We have from Aqua or Brights Grove Water Treatment Annual Report, and I have Mr. Sam Smith. Mr. Smith, are you there?
I am, Your Worship. Good evening.
Good evening. I just want to mention, council does have a copy of your report, but I will turn the meeting over to you. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me back again. So I'm just here to present the the section 11 and schedule 22 annual reports. So I will start with the section 11 report. This report is a basic overview of the system. It's the same as it was every other year. It gives a brief description of the system, things like that. I'll point your attention to the brief description and breakdown of some monetary expenses. So this is kind of what we would call capital work that we've performed. We upgraded the fluoride dosing systems. We rebuilt the booster pumps at the Mandamin Reservoir. We also replaced a low lift pump motor. We completed fire flow testing out in the system, which is to be done every 5 years, very valuable to the fire department. Which will also follow that up with hydrant painting in the spring here. We'll get the conveyance group from Aqua back, and they'll be painting the hydrants based on the fire flow testing and color coding to the fire flow testing. We completed some compressor repairs, obviously some water main repairs that we've had. We completed hydrant repairs, some valve repairs, and we did continued SCADA upgrades based on some issues that were found throughout the year. The rest of it is just our annual and regulatory sampling that we completed. I can tell you that all samples met all regulations, so there is no issues to report on those. And like I said, it's just the section 11 is a very brief overview of the drinking water system. Next, we have the Schedule 22 report. This report is a little more comprehensive than the Schedule 11. Sorry, here, I'm just pulling it up. So this report is to be provided to members of council by March 31st. So we've met that requirement. The annual report for the Petroleum drinking water system is required under Section 11 of OREG 170. Section 12 of OREG 170 requires both the summary report and the annual report be made available for inspection by any member of the public during normal business hours without charge. The report should be made available for inspection at the office of the municipality or at a location that is reasonably convenient to the users of the water system. In this report, it gives a summary of compliance to the regulations. We had our annual inspection on October 26th, completed by the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. The report received an overall inspection rating of 95.48. Both non-compliances, so there was 2 non-compliances listed. Both non-compliances were SCADA issues that come up, just some cleanup things that come up during some issues that were found from design of the system. The one, there were some tags corrected for data recording, and that resulted in a loss of data that we're supposed to maintain for 2 years. The data was reviewed when it was supposed to be and at the frequency that it was supposed to be, but once the report was pulled, we found that the data was gone. And then another time later in the year, the SCADA computer itself experienced a memory loss. We had to expand the memory of the system, and that resulted in a data loss as well. Both are easily corrected through the smaller upgrades on the SCADA system. I know it is a new system, but it's a very complicated system, so it's issues that have come up through the use and have been able to be easily fixed. And luckily, my operators were able to notice the issues immediately, so we were able to report those issues instead of it being found much later, which the MECP frowns upon. So although 95% is not 100%, as far as operations and safety and health and safety of the drinking water system, we can say that it was a good year for that. We had no issues as far as that goes. So there's a corrective actions there that you can see that we've taken. The rest of the report is flow summaries. The flows haven't really changed a whole lot from year to year, up and down here and there, but no major changes on that. So that is the annual report.
Thank you for that. That's pleased to hear that still everything is running okay and any issues have been corrected. Any questions from council? Seeing none, there is a motion that I would like to approve to basically endorse this verbal report. I'd like to ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for any further discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Such. I'll need a seconder, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to endorse as presented the 2021 Brights Grove Water Treatment Plant Annual Report.
Any further discussion regarding that report and that motion before you? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Sam, thank you for coming to address council. Have a good night.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Council.
Moving on to community announcements, recognitions, and awards. You have a list before you, and we have a motion on the floor. I'd like to get a mover and a seconder to put it on for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive as information only the March 28th, 2022 community announcements as presented.
Any discussion from council? Mrs. Ellsworth, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a reminder that Friday, April 1st, we should all try to be at the arena to celebrate Megan Hunter as she's inducted onto the Wall of Fame. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Ellsworth. And that's right. That's a terrific opportunity for all of council to please try and attend. That's great to have a local person like that there and to put on our Hall of Fame. All right. I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. That brings us to the first opportunity for the public to address council, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Pearson.
Thank you, Your Worship. I do have a registrant for this evening for the first opportunity, and so we'll call upon them first, and then I just ask anyone here from the public wishing to address council after that registrant has come forward to please raise your digital hand, and we will form a speakers list from there. So, Your Worship, our first registrant is Ms. Liz Welsh.
Mrs. Welsh, can you hear me okay? Mrs. Welsh, can you hear?
There we go. Yes,
Okay.
I've unmuted. There we go.
Okay, go ahead.
There we go. So this is just a few questions about treatment plant annual report. I did send them in advance to Thompson and Ms. Pearson and the CAO, I believe. And it's a good reminder to residents that individual councilors have relief from personal liability through the Municipal Act, but that does not apply to the Safe Drinking Water Act, that individual councilors can be personally responsible if there's an issue. My first question was the MECP rating was 95.48%, and I was wondering if it is just the two non-compliance items listed that contributed to the score. I can ask all three questions at once, and then perhaps
Well, I
Sam
wonder
can
if,
answer them.
like Sam, did you want to take these one at a time?
I can do that. Yep, that works for me.
Let's do them one at a time. Okay.
Sure.
Do you want to respond to the first question, please, Sam?
Yeah, so to answer your question, yes, there's two non-compliance items that contributed to 95.48%. There may be they asked like 250 yes or no questions. These two non-compliances may have contributed to a number of no answers on those questions, but it's still listed as two non-compliances.
Thank you. Is there any cybersecurity in place to prevent an attack on the system that operates at the water treatment plant?
Yeah, so for cybersecurity of the SCADA system at the plant, it is a standalone PLC. It is not internet-based or anything like that. It would require physically being on site at the water treatment plant to access that system.
Interesting, thank you. In the event of an emergency, how fast could the intake and the distribution system be shut down? I guess I had four questions, sorry. That's the third one.
Okay. I'm gonna answer that two separate ways. So the intake, that can be shut down immediately. If we were to be informed of a spill or anything like that, we can shut that system down immediately. There's also retention time so that if we were delayed in getting informed of a spill, you know, we have the clear wells and we have the reservoir. You know, if that was the case and it was going to be a long-term issue, we have the ability to take water from the Lambton area water supply system. As far as the distribution system, I'm just a little confused on what you mean by shutting the distribution system down. Like, you mean if there's an event where the water is unsafe to use?
Yes.
To shut it down, it would have to be a public announcement. We don't typically, you wouldn't go along to shut off everybody's water to their house. That would take lots of time. There'd be lots of repairs involved in that. We would have to get out and announce publicly that the water is unsafe to consume or to use. Those kind of situations are extremely rare. They are mainly boil waters, so you can still bathe and brush your teeth and things like that. But an event where the water would not be able to be used, there's certain situations. It's called microcystins, very rare. Actually, it's not found in Lake Huron. It's a Lake Erie issue, but those are situations like that where the water would not be able to be used. To shut the whole system down, you still need fire protection and things like that. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. What changes to the operation do you anticipate when the new intake is installed?
So we don't anticipate any changes in operation. We anticipate improvements on the process. That the operations will not change. The intake is the intake. But what it will do is it will provide longevity for equipment that is quite expensive, like the membranes, membrane filtration. I unfortunately I wasn't around when that purchase was made, but I would put it at close to $1 million. So it extends the life of those with cleaner raw water. It also will extend the life of the raw water strainers, which are quite expensive as well. And it should cut down on waste, plant waste, where we will have to do less backwashes and things like that. So as far as the operation goes, the operation remain the same. The plant really doesn't change. It'll just improve the longevity of equipment, improve the quality, the raw water quality coming in.
Thank you. That's good news. Thank you.
Okay.
I have a couple other questions for council, if that's okay.
Sure, go ahead.
The item 9B, which was ability. I'm curious why council didn't make a motion to either support Central Elgin or perhaps send a resolution of your own. This has been an issue for, the better part of probably 12 years. The government was working on things since 2019. They've been doing studies. The previous government provided 3 different models for that. One of them, which was the Saskatchewan model, which is a pretty good one. The AMCTO and OGRA identified it as a priority due to unstable premium increases for municipalities. And Frank Cowan actually gave a report to this council in 2019 of August with a concern about it. In fact, insurance costs rise 41% because of one claim. So I'm just wondering why it hasn't been addressed by council. It doesn't look like anything in the civic web in the last 4 years, except for the presentation by Frank Cowan in 2019. That was just endorsed that you could do what council would do what they could. But it would be nice to see a resolution from this council to try and get that moving along with the provincial government. I understand you can't answer that right now. My second question with respect to the, I believe it was 9E, the oil well proximity to structures. I read the letters that Mr. Brand provided, and the one from the ministry clarified that historical wells are not exempt from the act, which I believe was the consultant at the last meeting said that they were, and now the ministry has confirmed that they aren't. And I'm just wondering if council is going to reconsider the decision that they made at the last council meeting.
I guess I can open that up to council, but I should, as you're probably aware of, Mrs. Welch, the planning, our planner recommended we hire a consultant for a professional opinion to clarify that, and we did receive that. And I know there's a difference of opinion, but it's up to council. But I know the individual that was hired from the planning committee for the planner at the county basically gave his report on the distance they have to be, which was different than what the ministry was. But again, we rely on the planners and our experts to tell us what is right and what is wrong. So that's all I can say. Does council have anything you'd like to add?
Are you able to go back to the planner with this information?
Yeah, we could. It would. You could certainly. You could, but I mean, we've already paid a what we call, quote, a professional to come in with an opinion to clarify that, and that's why the planners did that. So there would be clarification on that. But unless any counselor or staff or Mrs. Pearson can add to that, I mean, you could go back, but we take recommendations from our planners, as you know, Mrs. Welsh. Mrs.
Your
Pearson, do you
worship,
have-
yeah, your worship, the only thing I might add was that this is, as you mentioned, been before council, had the public meeting before council, and as part of the bylaw through the Planning Act, there was an appeal period that was advertised and extended for 21 days. There were no appeals filed by the public during that appeal period time. So that would be the time to appeal any decisions or bring that forward to the board if anyone had any questioning towards the decision of the planning committee, or sorry, of the planner and the council at that time.
So the decision has already been made by council.
Correct, your worship. That was through bylaw, and the planning OLT appeal period for the Planning Act has concluded.
Thank you. Council, is there any other information council would like to speak to or add? Okay, if not, Mrs. Welch, do you have anything else?
I'm sorry, I missed that. You cut out.
Do you have anything else or any other questions?
Just that decision was based on obviously incorrect information, as the ministry has pointed out. And I think it should be taken back to the planner.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add, Mrs. Welsh?
Nope, that's it.
Okay, thank you for addressing council. Mrs. Pearson, do you have anyone else wishing to address council at this time?
Hi, Brad.
Worship, I'll ask that if anybody who would wish to raise their digital hand, and we will form a speakers list from that component. So we'll just give everybody a few minutes to raise your digital hand. And again, last call to raise
Hi,
your.
Mandy. This is Krista. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. And who are you? Sorry.
My name's Krista, but it'll be Walt Brand that wants to speak.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Brad, this is Walter Brand.
Yes. Okay, Walt, go ahead.
I have a few things to say about the proposed 46 lot Glenview subdivision.
Okay.
Adjacent to my oil field, right?
Yes.
Okay. I've received a letter from the Ministry of Natural Resources. I sent you this letter by email, but I'd like to reiterate it right here. Okay. Regarding the Augsgra, Ministry of Natural Resources officials provided the following response. The ministry can confirm that petroleum wells within fields designated as historical oil fields are not exempt from the setbacks in the standards. The ministry generally does not provide comment on site-specific planning where the municipality is the approval authority. Municipal planning authorities are responsible for ensuring that their decisions on Planning Act applications are consistent with the provincial policy statement, PPS, and where applicable, provincial plans. This is from the ministry. The setbacks are in fact valid, and they must be adhered to in this enterprise that's going on back there.
Okay, I think you've sent this to our
Jim
plan.
McIntosh is wrong, Brad. This is law.
I
This
think,
is the law.
okay, Mr. Brand, you sent that information on to the planners, have you?
Yes, I
Okay,
have.
all right. Again, we rely on our planners' expertise to give us advice. And when we went out to, to get a professional opinion on that, we basically have to go by that. But I'll ask council. Councillor Dayton, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Yes.
There we
Jim
go. Yes, sir, I
McIntosh.
do.
Just
Well,
a
go
second.
ahead.
Hang on, Walt. I'm going to let Councillor Dayton speak first. Go ahead, Councillor Dayton.
So, and this is not the fallibility of our staff by any way, shape, or form. In light of this, I would think that this warranted we at least have a discussion again with our planner, and maybe this wasn't brought to his attention. He now has this in front of him. I'm not sure what's required from us at this point in time, Your Worship, but if it needs a motion of some sort, I'd be happy to put that in to instruct the staff to relook at this. Like I said, it's not something we can dispute the M&R on. It obviously was missed somewhere along the way.
Councillor, thank you, Councillor Dayton. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, I kind of agree with Councillor Dayton. I think in light of this new information, I think it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we get it right. So I think it definitely warrants going back and looking at it again. I want to make sure whatever we do, like, I don't want to go against ministry policies. I just, I think it's incumbent that we make sure we get it right.
So we could consider a motion to refer it to our planners just for a report back if you like. But I don't think this is new, Mr. Brand. I think that was, I think they were already aware of that before, but they just wanted clarification, I think, on the wording. But Councillor Dayton, would you like to make a motion then to refer it to our planners for a report back?
I would, yes, Your Worship, if we can get a report back with the, just explanation, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I think we did kind of go through some of this, and I know you weren't there, maybe Councillor Dayton, but all right. Did you want to second that, Councillor Purdy? Okay, seconded by Councillor Purdy. And I'll come back to you, Walt. Hang on just for a sec. Any discussion from council? Councillor Such. I think you're on mute. Can't hear you, Marty.
Should be bottom left on your screen, Councillor Such. Oh.
All right. All right, we'll move on. Any other councillors have anything to add? All right, what I'll do, I'll have maybe our clerk, Mrs. Pearson, just read that motion then first before we vote on it.
Thank you, Your Worship. And Councillor Dayton, if I am not correct, please interject as you need. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to provide the information received from Mr. Brand to the County Planning Authority for a report back to Council.
Thank you. Is there any
100%,
discussion
thank
regarding
you.
that? You okay with that? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. I'll come back to you, Mr. Brand. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Well, thank you for that. This is the law, and the law has to be followed, Brad. And I'm sorry you got erroneous information, but this is an act of producing oil property. It's not what Jim McIntosh said it was. And I fail to understand how the county planning department can disregard provincial law.
Well, I don't think they do. I think they were just trying to sort it out, but I think, Mr. Brand, let's wait until we hear back from the planning department with their report. Is that okay?
Is Rob Nesbitt on Toronto tonight?
Don't think he is, Mrs. Pearson. Is the planner on tonight?
I know, your worship, the planning department is not present this evening.
No. Well, I have a bunch of questions for him, Brad, but I'm happy with your decision and I think it's the right decision and we have to do this legally. And this can be ironed out beforehand, so it doesn't end up into a legal confrontation, which
Okay,
will hold
no.
the development up more and more.
All right, well,
So
let's, Mr.
in
Brand,
everyone's
that's,
best interest for this to be settled now.
okay. Well, let's wait. We'll see. We'll get the report back and we can discuss it further at that time.
And they will prepare a report.
Yes, we've asked them to do that. They'll report back to council.
I've advised the planner of this law.
Okay,
And another thing that's really a sore spot for me, they haven't taken any consideration from the provincial policy statement with respect to standoff distances from operating, producing oil fields, which are industrial. This has to be taken care of, Brad.
okay. Well, let's wait until we get the report back and then hopefully we can answer some of those questions. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brand and Chris, for addressing council. We'll move on. Mrs. Pearson, do we have anyone else waiting to address council?
Your worship, I did not on that last call to the public see anybody with a raised hand. So if there is, we'll give one last look here. But I did not see anybody with our last opportunity. And still no one, your worship.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Pearson. We'll move on to the financial accounts report. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Need a move and a seconder from council. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive as information only the December 31st, 2021 through March 14th, 2022 financial accounts as circulated.
Okay, any discussion from council? Councillor O'Hara, do you have anything you would like to add?
No, I don't. I went through them very thoroughly.
Thank you. And I'll ask Mrs. Annette Strand, Deputy Treasurer, do you have anything you would like to
I
add?
lost everything.
Because the internet went down.
So what do we do?
Sorry, Annette Strand, are you there? Annette, can you hear me? All right, I'll move on. You've heard the motion. We'll call the vote. All those in favor of approving the accounts? Opposed? That motion carries. Moving on to 15 on finance, we have nothing to report tonight. We have nothing for water, wastewater in operations. We have a motion regarding the compost site and the spring 2022 operations. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, your worship, and that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28th, 2022 regarding the 2022 compost transfer site and dates, and that the 2022 compost pass fee, events, and curbside brush collection dates be approved.
Any discussion from council regarding that motion? Councillor O'Hara.
I would have liked to seen more than one time that the compost transfer site is open in July and August. I'd like to see it open a couple Saturdays instead of once in the month.
Well, if it's up to council, I'll just ask Mr. Thompson, do you have anything you'd like to add?
I have nothing to add at this time, your worship.
I think Councillor O'Hara, if it's council's wishes to add another one in July and August, we could do that. but there certainly would, there's a cost associated with that. But it's, we can certainly do that. And if you want to make a motion, we could certainly put it on the floor for discussion.
I'll make a motion that we add a second date in July and in August so that it's every 2 weeks.
All right, I'll ask for a seconder to put that motion on for discussion. Seconded by Councillor Purdy. Now I'll open it up to the floor of council. Any discussion from council? I will ask Mrs. Pearson just to, oh, sorry, Councillor Dayton.
I realize that this is going to add a little bit of extra cost to our budget. I'm sure that's fairly nominal, but I'd like to know how much extra we're spending. I'm not opposed to it, by the way. I just want to know what we're spending on.
Mr. Thompson, do you have the cost per date?
Your worship, I don't have the cost per date off the top of my head, but you mean it depend on how busy those days would be as far as traffic goes and any kind of material being brought in. That's why we go down to 1 day in July and August, because they don't seem to be as busy. We've done that for the last 3, 4, 5 years. But there's obviously staff. There'll be some students out there, depending on availability and potentially a full-time person, but it would be mostly wages. And like I said, I don't anticipate it would be that busy because July and August, the grass isn't really growing. There's not much gardening going on, but if council wishes to add 2 dates, that's fine.
You don't have a ballpark figure, just kind of per day? Mr.
No, I have no idea. I have no idea, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dayton.
That's fine. I retract that. I'm still in agreement. It's a good idea. It's going to cost a little bit of wages. I'm happy with that. Thank you.
Okay, any other members of council wishing to speak to that? Okay, Mrs. Pearson, we read that, did we not?
Not yet, your worship. Happy to if you wish.
Yeah, please go ahead.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to direct the Operations Department to add a second date to the compost transfer site in July and August of 2022.
All right. Is that all clear to council? I'll say again, any further discussion regarding those changes? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of those 2 additional dates? Opposed?
Come here.
That motion carries. Okay, thank you.
Your worship, we do have the original motion now.
Okay, do we all need a mover and a seconder for that original motion, I guess now then? Moved
That
by
was
Council-
actually moved by Councillor Welton and seconded by Councillor O'Hara.
Okay, do you want to read that motion then, please?
Certainly, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28, 2022 regarding the 2022 compost transfer site and dates, and that the 2022 compost pass fee, event, and curbside brush collection dates be approved as amended.
Good. Okay, thank you. Any discussions regarding that motion? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Okay, moving on to number 2, we have a report from the Director of Operations regarding the budgeted 2022 capital purchase for the half-ton fleet truck. And I'll ask for a motion to put that, or a mover to seconder to put that motion on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Dayton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28, 2022 regarding procurement of a half-ton fleet pickup truck, and that council approved the 2022 capital budget increase of $10,645, and that the RFP for the supply of a half-ton fleet pickup be awarded to Blue Mountain Chrysler.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any discussion from council regarding that motion? Councillor O'Hara.
I guess it's only a comment, but I find it sad that we have to go that far away to buy a truck.
I don't know, Mr. Thompson, can you address that, please?
Yeah, through your worship, this tender was put on bids and tenders, which is the approved vessel for any tendering for the town. So it was put out on bids and tenders. Mrs. Pearson sent an email to the local dealerships to tell them that it was on bids and tenders. Once we put it into bids and tenders, we did get verification that one local dealerships in Wyoming was able to bid because they paid the fee to bid through bids and tenders. And the other two local dealerships, one in Petrolia and one outside of Petrolia, aren't on bids and tenders, so they weren't able to bid. But yeah, I was surprised that we only got 2 bids as well, but we followed the process.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion from council? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. The next item is a report from the Director of Operations regarding an R1, R2 tender results for 2022. And I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. That is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28th, 2022 regarding the 2022 R1, R2 tenders, and that the tender be awarded to Sevcon Construction in the amount of $231,006.11, excluding HST.
Okay, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. Thank you. I'll open it up to all the council. Any discussion regarding that motion before you tonight? Seeing none, all those, oh, sorry, Councillor O'Hara, do you have a question?
No, that's for Valentina Street, right?
No, through your worship, Councillor
go
Hare,
ahead.
this is for repaving of Glenview, England, and Pearl through our R1, R2
okay.
program.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, you're right.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
The other Councillor here is further on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, any other discussion? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we have a report from the Director of Operations regarding an update budgeted 2022 capital purchase for the compact excavator original RTC February the 14th, 2022. And as council can see, there are 2 options there for council. So I'll open it up to council to see which one you'd like to select. A, as you can see, was for $49,735 from Kubota, and B is for $44,463 from Bobcat. And this is a result of just an oversight, but I open it up to council to see which one they'd like to select. If you select B, we will need to rescind our previous motion from our last council meeting. Councilor O'Hara.
I just have a question, and is how could we have an oversight like where there must be some explanation to this.
Mr. Thompson, would you like to speak to that, please?
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor O'Hara, we put out requests for proposals, and we reached out to numerous companies, some local, some out of town, some vendors that had used, some vendors that had new. The one vendor in question, Advantage Farm Equipment, they sent 2 quotes, and the one was missed by me. It was a mistake. The gentleman called me about a month ago and couldn't understand why his quote wasn't on the report. At the time when he asked, I didn't know what he was talking about, but then I looked back on my emails and it was an oversight on my part. So I thought it was necessary and the correct thing to do to come back to council with his quotes. I called the Kubota dealership, explained the situation. The gentleman was understanding, and I told him that we'd be back at council tonight with the quote from Advantage. Yeah, so here we are now, but obviously it's an unfortunate situation, but just trying to, make it right.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. My thinking before too also was to maybe reconsider just shutting it all down and rebidding the whole thing all over again, but that gets awkward too. Councilor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. Just a question I have. I see it's about $5,000 difference. Now, this isn't my area of expertise, obviously, but is one brand any better quality than the other? Say, like when you're talking about automobiles. Some are better made than others. I'm just curious if one is much better than the other, that would make a
I think
difference.
that's difficult, but Councilor Purdy, but I will ask Mr. Thompson, is there any comparisons in the two pieces of equipment?
Through your worship, they're both similar. They both ironically have a Kubota motor. The specs are the same. I guess like Councilor Purdy said, if you like Hondas, you'll drive a Honda. If you like Chevys, you'll drive a Chevy. I don't think I'm at liberty to say what my preference is, unless I'm directly asked, but I don't think that's probably appropriate at this time.
No.
Yeah, I understand what you're asking, Mr. Purdy, but I don't think it's probably appropriate for me to say.
I think if I can, but both of them met the specs that we sent out. Is that correct?
That's correct, your worship.
Thank you. Councillor Welton.
Yes, your worship. From my experience, Kubota has a longevity, and I don't know so much about the other, but I know Kubota has a great history on having a good product. And anybody that's had one that I know speak very highly of them. So I'm just going to leave it at that. My recommendation would be the Kubota. But
Okay, thank you, Councillor Welton. Again, to clarify for council, for the Kubota, we already had a motion to approve that. If we're going to change it or go to the other one, we'd have to rescind that. Councillor Dayton.
Being the fact that we've already put a motion out, we've already approved it, are we violating any rules, laws, or other by rescinding that order to go to the other one, even though it was an oversight of nobody's, nobody did this on purpose? Are we doing anything wrong by going back and rescinding it? It is a $5,000 savings, I realize, for the town, but I also don't want to get us into litigation down the road. Like, if they've already put an order in for this, are we causing issue or going to pay extra because of that?
That's a good question. I think I'll ask either Mr. Charlebois or Mrs. Pearson maybe to comment on that, please.
I'll defer to our CAO, your worship.
Thank you. Mr. Charlebois, go ahead.
Yes, your worship, to Councillor Dayton. Our lawyer he's away for the next couple of weeks. So he wasn't available for us to discuss. However, my recollection of taking my business law courses back in the university was the Kubota people, or the company, they've apparently have already ordered the machine. So I would suggest that there is some obligation there. I'm not sure how strong it is, because correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, we have a fair bit of Kubota equipment with the town, so we have a really good rapport with Kubota people.
Yeah, that's through your worship to Mr. Charlebois. That's correct. It has been ordered. I don't think it's landed yet, but it might have. I know he ordered the thumb for it, and it was sitting there when I made that call. That's not a very nice call I had to make a couple of weeks ago, but yeah, you are correct. It's been ordered. I don't know, like I said, if it's landed or not, but the implement was there to go on it. That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. I think no matter what council decides, it's an awkward situation no matter what. Councillor Purdy, go ahead.
Thank you, worship. I just did want to clarify from my earlier statements. I was more referring to, because it said that both of them had warranties, and I was just wondering which one, maybe some have a little better than others. That was it wasn't my intent to on the personal preference. It was more of, from a financial standpoint, we have more advantage.
Yeah, through your worship, Councillor Purdy, the warranty is the same, Councillor Purdy. They're virtually identical machines. A little bit different design wise. The bucket's a little different, but the tonnage is the same. The reach is the same. The width is the same. The digging depth is the same. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Thompson. Councillor Dayton, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't think there's a requirement for a motion, but my opinion definitely will put a play here The fact that we've put a motion forward, we've already approved it. We've issued an order to the South Point. Unfortunately, for Advantage, it didn't work. Their email was lost in translation. I guess that's kind of why we should be using a closed bid system or at least a sealed bid system to get away from this type of thing. But I would say that in my opinion, the order's cut. It's spilled milk. We sent in a condolence letter to Advantage, and I do apologize, but it does happen when we do these type of email buys. And
Okay, Councillor Dayton, are you willing to put that motion on the floor?
100%.
Okay, before I go to you, Councillor Hare, is there a seconder for Wade's motion? Seconded by Councillor Purdy. All right, I'll just go back to Councillor O'Hara. You had your hand up.
Well, I was going to put a motion forth to rescind the previous motion, but I guess we're too late for that.
Well, no, we're still discussing this. I think, and I'll have Mrs. Pearson read it, but what we're looking at is the adopting A. I'll just go back. Councillor Such, go ahead.
You know what? There was a process that was put out there with a due date. You know what? We're in a no-win situation. They met the due date. I think to save face and do the right thing, which it doesn't matter, we're going to be in trouble either way, to accept the bid from Kubota and move forward and hope it don't happen again.
Thank you, Councillor Such. All right, any other discussion from council? I will ask Mrs. Pearson just to read that so we're all clear on the motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28th, 2022 regarding procurement of a 3-ton compact excavator, and that the Operations Department be directed to proceed with the original procurement through South Point Equipment in the amount of $49,735 for a Kubota mini excavator.
Okay, is that clear from council? Okay, I'll open it up. Any other discussion from council regarding that motion on the floor? If not, all those in, oh, sorry, Councillor O'Hara, do you have a comment?
I'm totally opposed to the motion. I agree it was our mistake in the town, but the fact is, it's still, I believe, around $5,000 difference of taxpayers' money. And I can't see that the amount of business that we give South Point, I can't see them not still having a good relationship with the town of Petrolia.
Okay, thank you, Councillor O'Hara. Any other discussion from council? All right, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion on the floor? 1, 2, 3. Opposed? 1, 2. Okay, that motion will carry. Okay, so we'll move on to a report from the Director of Operations regarding Valentina Street tender. And I'll ask for a mover to seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Such. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the Director of Operations dated March 28th, 2022 regarding tender results for the Valentina Street Reconstruction Project, and that Cope Construction and Contracting Incorporated be awarded the Valentina Street Reconstruction Contract and the amount of $288,427. Wasn't really trying to make it less than the tender.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Okay, any discussion regarding that motion before you? Councillor O'Hara.
Is that from Petrolia line into the development, or is it considered the part of the south part too?
I'll ask Mr. Thompson to clarify that, please.
Through your worship to Councillor O'Hara, that's from Petrolia line to the north end of the development, Councillor O'Hara.
Okay,
and then
thank
we will
you very much.
tackle, we'll tackle the south end of Valentina when the second phase of Greenwood Acres gets going, and we'll reconstruct Edward and then that southern portion of Valentina from Edward to Joe Street.
Thanks very much.
And just if I can, Mr. Thompson, we will not be paving that though this year. Is that correct?
Yes, we will be paving it, Your Worship. Correct.
Is there a concern about damage from during the construction?
They'll have to enter the project from the south end. I think it'll work out quite nicely because they've started from the north and gone south. So I think that probably the tenants will be moving in the north end, right around the conclusion of construction, hopefully, and then they'll have to direct all construction traffic in through the south end. So I think it'll work out quite nicely. MIG's been in touch with Gold Leaf and their engineers, and everybody's on the same page.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. Anything else from council or any questions regarding that motion on the floor? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And moving on to community services and facilities, we have a report from the Director of Facilities and Community Services regarding the AGCO significant community events. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Such. Need a seconded by Councillor Dayton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you. And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to hereby grant significant community festival event status to the following 2022 Town of Petrolia community events: Pizza Fest, Canada Day Rock the Park, Art in the Park, Barn Dance, and Harvest Fest, as outlined in the report of the Director of Facilities and Community Services dated March 28th, 2022.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions from council? Mr. Menzies, do you have anything you'd like to add?
Nothing at this time, Your Worship.
Thank you. All right. Again, I'll ask council one more time. Any further discussion? If not, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on to administration, we have a report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the 2021 achievement and activities. And I'll ask for a motion to put that, or a mover and a second to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Such, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the CAO Treasurer dated the 28th of March, 2022 regarding our 2021 achievements and activities.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. I would just want to acknowledge and thank Mr. Charlebois, our CAO Treasurer, for that. I think it's very important to have that and remind council of all the good things that they have done. So again, back to you, Mr. Charlebois, please. Thank you, and thank your team for their work involved with that as well.
Thank you, Your Worship. 2021 was a challenging year. We got lots done, as you can see, but COVID kept throwing curveballs at us. I'm glad to see the last report we talked about. The events are coming back, the in-person events. So it'll be great to get back to the community events. So 22 should be a great year.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois, and we certainly hope so. But as I say, we tend here, we dwell so much on negative issues, we tend to forget all the good things we've done. So it's nice to see that. Okay, any discussion from council regarding that motion? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we have a report from the Clerk Operations Clerk regarding the Garden Center, Heidi's Independent. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to adopt the report as submitted by the Clerk Operations Clerk regarding the 2022 Garden Center at Heidi's Independent Grocer, and that the Water Department install a temporary meter at this location, and that all water usage used to operate the Garden Center be invoiced at the end of the season.
Any discussion from council? Mrs. Pearson, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I love this. I love when we get these requests. It's the first true sign of spring.
I like it too. Thank you. All right, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. Moving on, we have a report from the Chief Administrative Officer regarding the 2021 Statistics Canada Census results. And we have a motion there. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Somebody will need to move and second. Moved by Councillor O'Hara, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the CAO Treasurer dated March 28th, 2022 regarding the 2021 Statistics Canada Census results.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. And just before I open it up to council, this was discussed at the roundtable in my last meeting, which was great news, just stating that the town has grown by 4.7% with a population now of 6,013. Any discussion from council? Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything you would like to add?
Just that's great news. We're growing. Petrolia is growing at roughly the same rate as the country as a whole, at of the 5% there. And with all the planning activities that are going on now, we should be able to beat that at the next census in 2026.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. All right, any further discussion from council? Okay, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And we have a report from the Deputy Clerk regarding the 2021 Vital Statistics meeting attendance. I'll ask for a mover and a second to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Welton. Seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Deputy Clerk dated March 28th, 2022 regarding vital statistics and meeting attendance second half of 2021.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Any questions from council? We don't probably have a deputy. Mrs. Pearson, do you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Your worship, you are correct. This was her final report with us, and no, it's great. This is part of what we do, just in compliance with the act, but also to show truly just how busy of a registrar's office we are.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. Okay, I'll call the vote. So if there's no more discussion, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move on. We have a report from the Clerk Operations Clerk regarding the 2021 Council Remuneration and Expense Report and PSSD filing. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that motion on the floor for discussion, please. Need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor Dighton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
That is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Clerk Operations Clerk dated March 28th, 2022 regarding the 2021 Council Remuneration and Expenses and Annual Public Sector Disclosure filing.
Any discussion from council? If not, all those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And we have a report from the CAO Treasurer regarding the COVID-19 government announcement support. I'll ask for a move and a seconder to put that motion on the floor. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Welton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the Council of the Town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the CAO Treasurer dated March 28th, 2022 regarding the COVID-19 government announced support.
Any discussion from council? Mr. Charlebois, do you have anything else you'd like to add?
Just that this is an excellent document put out by the province for both the provincial, federal COVID support programs. It's about 150 pages. It's both for individuals and for companies. And over the next month or two, the federal and provincial governments will be producing their 2022 budgets. And I think we'll see some even more COVID related programs.
Thank you, Mr. Charlebois. We certainly hope so. Any discussion from council? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we'll move on to Fire Emergency Management and Public Safety. We have a report from the Fire Chief, Director of Public Safety, CEMC, regarding establishing and regulating bylaw revisions. And there's a motion before you. I'll have the clerk read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to adopt the report of the Director of Public Safety and Fire Chief dated the 28th day of March 2022 regarding revisions to bylaw number 66 of 2019, and that the clerk be directed to amend as outlined bylaw 66 of 2019.
Any discussion from council? I'll need a mover. Did I get a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor?
No, your worship.
Okay, I'll need a mover and a second. Moved by Councillor Purdy. Seconded by, I need someone, Councillor Welton. Any further discussion regarding that motion before you? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Then we have a Fire Chief, Director of Public Safety, CEMC, Hazardous Materials Response to Plimpton, Wyoming. And there's a motion before you. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor, please. Moved by Councillor Dighton, seconded by Councillor O'Hara. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and adopt the report of the Director of Public Safety Fire Chief dated this 28th day of March 2022 regarding the hazardous response agreement with Plimpton, Wyoming, and that the mayor and clerk be authorized to execute a bylaw agreement with the town of Plimpton, Wyoming and the town of Petrolia for provision of this service.
Just to speak to council, there will be a bylaw coming back to council for their final approval and for my signature at that time. Any discussion from council? All those in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. And we have a report from the Fire Chief, Director of Public Safety, CEMC, regarding the Petrolia, North Enerskill and Fire Department's annual report for 2021. And I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy. Seconded by Councillor Dighton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, your worship. And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive and file the report of the Director of Public Safety and Fire Chief dated this 28th day of March 2022 regarding the 2021 annual report.
Any discussion from council? I would just like to congratulate the chief and his team for that report. If you hadn't gone through it in detail, please do so. But Mr. Charlebois, please pass on to the fire chief. I'm not sure if he's on today or not.
No, he's not on. He's
Okay.
not on, but I'll pass along your words, your worship.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Charlebois. Okay, any other discussion from council? If not, all those in favor of approving that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And we have a report from the Fire Chief, Director of Public Service, CEMC, regarding training requirements mandated by the Ontario Fire Marshal. And there's a motion before you. I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to put that on the floor for discussion, please.
Thank you, your worship. And that is for the council of the town of Petrolia to receive the report of the Director of Public Safety and Fire Chief dated this 28th day of March 2022 regarding training requirements and mandates for the fire departments.
Okay, I'll need a mover and a seconder, I think, for that, please. Moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Such. Any discussion regarding that motion before you? If not, all in favor of that motion? Opposed? That motion carries. We go on to marketing, arts and communications. We have nothing to report tonight. There's no closed meeting. This brings us now to the second opportunity for the public to address council, and I'll turn it over to Mrs. Pearson, please.
Thank you, your worship. And so, yes, anyone wishing to address council at the second opportunity, just ask that you raise your bionic hand. We'll form a speakers list from that, and we will bring you forward through to the council floor. Your worship, I have not received any requests and I see no hands raised.
Thank you, Mrs. Pearson. So we'll move on to 18, which is new and unfinished business. I have a couple items that I can start before I open it up to council. The first one is I would like to request that council change our next council meeting from Monday, April the 11th to Wednesday, April 13th at 7 p.m. The reason for this request is to allow Councillor Field, staff, and myself to attend the Good Roads Conference in Toronto. The other reason is because Good Roads changed their regular dates to allow for this in-person conference. And I will need a motion from council to do that. Moved by Councillor Dighton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. Any discussion regarding that? All those in favor of approving that motion, changing that date? Opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. And the second thing I have is I would like to inform council that we will be going back in person to council and committee meetings effectively Wednesday, April 13th, and that staff make the necessary safety installations. And furthermore, that staff report back to council to see what is necessary to keep the council meetings online for anyone wishing to see it at their convenience. So unless there's any objection, our next meeting of council will be Wednesday, April 13th, and we will be meeting in person. So that's basically for your information. The other thing I want to just mention is a year or so ago, I wanted to change the council seating arrangements. And because of COVID, it's been delayed, but the seating arrangements will be changed on Wednesday. The people on the inside will move to the outside and everyone will move in by one. And the names will be put at the correct place in case you're not sure where to sit. And that's all I have. So I'll just ask, is there anything from council regarding any items of new or unfinished business you'd like to bring forward at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll ask for a mover and a seconder to have the bylaws read a first and second time. I'll need a move and it's moved by Councillor Dighton, seconded by Councillor Purdy. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion, please.
Thank you, Your Worship, and that is for bylaw number 12 and 13 of 2022 to be read a first and second time.
All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. And I'll ask to have the two bylaws read a third time, signed, sealed, and numbered. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Welton, seconded by Councillor O'Hara, and I'll ask the clerk to read those bylaws, please.
And that is for bylaw number 12 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to adopt a council policy in relation to the use of corporate resources during a municipal election, be read a third time and finally passed. And that bylaw number 13 of 2022, being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Town of Petrolia to confirm the resolutions and motions of the Council of the Town of Petrolia, which were adopted up to and including March 28th, 2022, be read a third time and finally passed.
Any discussion regarding those bylaws? If not, all those in favor? Opposed? That motion carries. And I'll need a motion to adjourn until April the 13th, 2022, moved by Councillor Purdy, seconded by Councillor Dighton. I'll ask the clerk to read that motion.
And that is for the March 28th, 2022 meeting of the Council of the Town of Petrolia be adjourned to the next regular scheduled meeting of council to be held on Wednesday, April 13th, 2022, or to the call of the chair.
All those in favor of adjourning? Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, everyone. I know it was a heavy night, but was a good meeting. Have a good rest of the night. Thank you.